Max Verstappen, the greatest Formula 1 driver of today, is set to win another championship with Red Bull, but it might just be his last. You see, Red Bull as a team have been, let's say, shaky recently. Not in performance, but in internal conflicts and controversies. There has always been a bit of tension behind closed doors, with Max's dad Jos Verstappen in contention with Christian Horner for quite some time now. And unless you've been living under a rock in the F1 world, Christian Horner has been in some hot water recently, and without getting into it, he has been accused of inappropriate behaviours with a co-worker. And it seems evident that many people are no longer in favour of having him around at the team. Namely Jos Verstappen and Dr. Helmut Marko. This name is bound to send shivers down the spine of anyone in Formula 1, as Helmut Marko is one of the most influential and terrifying people in the sport and the Red Bull camp. Jos Verstappen and Helmut Marko have always been buddy-buddy though, and is speculated to be the reason that Max Verstappen became the core of the team at such a young age. It is rumoured that Jos and Helmut no longer want Christian Horner at the team, but would you believe it? Christian is set on going nowhere. So with that in mind, something's got to give and someone's got to leave. And if it ain't Horner... Alright, to step away from the current speculations though, Helmut Marko has said that he wasn't sure if he'd be sticking around in Formula 1 for a couple of years now. And if he did, I think I'd have to say that Max Verstappen might not be so keen on hanging around at Red Bull. Without Marko at the team, he's losing a major incentive of staying. You've got to think about Max Verstappen's point of view as well. And he's already stated many times that he's not really in Formula 1 just to beat all the records and would stop if he got bored. And I don't know about you, but what seems more boring, staying at one team your whole career and winning absolutely everything, or doing what many people couldn't do in Formula 1, leaving for a worse off, more interesting team and trying to bring them to the front. And with big changes coming soon in 2026, the sport is going to be changing up quite a bit in the ranks. These regulations will see major improvements for one team in particular, Aston Martin, but we'll get to that later. And speaking of these changes, Max Verstappen has actually already warned that they will ruin Formula 1. What he knows may just influence his decision going forward. So now that we know there's a good chance and reason for Max leaving, we should look at some of his options. The first major option that I know you're all screaming is Mercedes. Mercedes clearly has one very vacant seat, a seat that many drivers will be eyeing up for sure. Mercedes, with the loss of Lewis Hamilton, will certainly be looking for a driver who can immediately bring them back to the top of the championship and win races week in, week out. Maybe not actually. You see, Mercedes are quite far behind, especially considering where they were 2 to 3 years ago. And with this move that would occur in 2025, we mustn't forget that that would only be 1 year before the new rule changes come in 2026. So maybe if you're Mercedes, that's something you want to prioritize, right? And let's not forget that George Russell has kind of always been their long-term plan for someone to lead the team. And another thing as well, to top that off, Kimi Antonelli. Toto Wolff has already expressed that he wants to have Kimi Antonelli, the 17-year-old driver, in the team. For those unaware, Kimi Antonelli is a Mercedes junior driver who's currently competing in Formula 2 at the age of 17 for Prema Racing. And at the age of only 17, he's already won the Italian Formula 4, ADAC F4, the FIA Formula 4 Cup, and both the Formula Regional Middle East and European Championships. Now, keeping in mind that Mercedes do want this young driver at the team, 2025 would seem the perfect time to promote him, giving him 1 full season to prepare for the biggest changes in 2026. Now, let's pretend that they don't promote Antonelli. Max wouldn't be such a bad shout for the second seat. I mean, we can't forget that Max did almost sign for them before signing for Red Bull in 2014. He and his father did meet up with Toto Wolff, but at the time they did have Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton, so they didn't really have a seat prepared for them. And what was one of the biggest reasons that he didn't hang around Mercedes waiting for a seat? Helmut Marko. Now, let's say he does join for 2025, it could go horribly wrong for a number of reasons. First of all, competition with George Russell could definitely bring some conflict within the ranks, as could his father having a lot less power within the team, as Mercedes is very set on their structure. And of course, Kimi Antonelli will not be Mercedes driver unless they kick out George Russell or Max. So it could be creating more problems than the ones they are solving. So sure, Max could have a future at Mercedes, but the closer you look at it, the less likely it appears. So if not Mercedes, then where? Aston Martin. The Aston Martin Aramco cognizant Formula 1 team is the best suited, most likely move for Max Verstappen, as unlikely as it may seem at first glance. Assuming that there is a seat in the team, the situation is a whole lot clearer and simpler for Max Verstappen than it is at Mercedes. There would be a seat available for seemingly as long as he wants, with no pressure to promote a young protege. But you may be asking, how will there be a free seat? Sure, the prospect of Lance Stroll moving to a different team seems impossible, and you might be right. So then Alonso would have to leave. Or maybe not. Whilst people write off the possibility, there is actually a pretty good chance that Lance Stroll won't race at Aston Martin next year. Now, Let me explain. As we know, Lance's father Lawrence Stroll is the team owner and would realistically love to win the championship with his son at the wheel. But as time has gone on, Lance's drive, pun intended, has seemingly grown smaller, as he has expressed in the past that maybe he's getting a bit tired of it and could even look at a different sport. He named tennis, but I think he might be past the age of that. But it honestly does seem likely that he might move to a different racing category, namely WEC WEC, the World Endurance Championship, or something else. And whilst he might want to stay in F1, because let's be real, who wouldn't, I think there's a conversation there to be had between father and son over how much do you really want this when we are looking at something bigger than ourselves. Especially when you're sort of saying we have Verstappen at the door. And if you think I'm crazy, well, Crofty said it himself. So we could see Verstappen and Alonso at Aston Martin, or let's say that Lance does stay and Alonso would have to leave. Alright, yeah, this is a future me editing the video right now. I filmed this a few days before Alonso had announced that he is actually staying at Aston Martin for the next 2 years. So, just to humour you guys, I'm going to leave a little bit of it in here because there is still some truth to what I'm saying. He could leave and break his contract, but yeah, Alonso will be staying for the foreseeable future. So yeah, good stuff. Mind if Alonso, he doesn't want to move to Mercedes, why would Verstappen? So, weighing up the options, what other teams have you got on the grid? You've got McLaren, not there. Well, you can't go to Ferrari. Mercedes is an attractive, hang on, there's another seat. Red Bull. There's another seat available at Red Bull. They could do a driver swap. Driver swaps do exist, ladies and gentlemen, and we've seen it happen before. And at the rate that things are going in the season now, as funny as it sounds, Red Bull could have a full Spanish lineup in Alonso and Carlos Sainz. But that's a story for another video. So Alonso could move to a different team like Red Bull and free up a seat, or he could retire for the second time. So now that we know that he could find a seat at Aston Martin, the question is, why would he want it? Verstappen will know exactly what he's getting into. The key consideration is to have the most competitive package for 2026 onwards mostly, and Aston has the best upwards momentum and would be the best place for a long-term move, and we'll explain why. Crucially, in 2026, Honda will be joining Aston Martin as their sole engine provider, meaning they won't be relying on Mercedes anymore, and Honda will be saying bye-bye to Red Bull, as could Max. No one understands and respects Honda quite as much as Max Verstappen does, and given the inside line that he has, he'd be quite confident in having the Japanese manufacturer leading this now very promising team, especially as we head into a new era. Away from the car, Max will no doubt be aware of the efforts of Lawrence Stroll and his intense competitive spirit. Lawrence Stroll is one of the world's most successful businessmen, an intimidating figure focused on one thing and one thing only: winning. When this man says that he will do something, he does it, and he has said that he's going to win the World Championship with Aston Martin, and I can bet that he won't be stepping away until he does it, even if his son were to leave the team. Stroll's efforts to enhance the team are unbelievable, as he aims to poach every key member of every other team's personnel to make sure he has the best team producing the car and, running it in the garage, pit stops, on the strategy, you name it, they're going to have it. With many senior engineers and mechanics already joining the team, with quite a few coming from Red Bull, including some major ones who may be following soon. It is no secret in the realm of Formula 1 that Aston Martin have made a very sizable bid for none other than Adrian Newey. Now, if you don't know that name, you're about to. Undoubtedly the most successful Formula 1 designer, Adrian Newey is currently Red Bull's Global Chief Technical Officer and has won 11 Constructors' Championships throughout his career. Every team that he has touched has turned to gold. So if Aston Martin were to bring him on board, yeah, so would they. Aston Martin also has a brand new state-of-the-art facility with a brand new aero tunnel and an incredible technical team. Now, to look at the management hierarchy, Verstappen and his father Jos will very much appreciate the simplicity of it all, with Lawrence Stroll being at the head of it all with their right-hand man, Mike Crack. This direct power structure makes a lot easier for Jos Verstappen to slip in with a more flexible organizational development. In other words, giving more power to the Verstappen name, which is something that they won't get so easily at Mercedes. Finally, one of the biggest cards up Aston Martin's sleeve comes from their title sponsor, Aramco. Aramco is the leading sustainable fuel of the future in Formula 1, as they will take over as the global fuel provider of Formula 1 in 2026. Let me say that again, Aramco will be the Formula 1 fuel provider in the new era of Formula 1, where they are moving to a brand new sustainable fuel. And the development race will be very much directed towards this factor, meaning Aston Martin may just have some nice inside information on how to get the best out of it for their car and their new engine provider Honda, which they will have a lot of flexibility with now that they will be building the engine around their own car. I feel like I need to add this here as well, that Aramco did try to buy out Aston Martin a few weeks ago, but Lawrence Stroll said no, so clearly he's not going anywhere because that would have been a lot of money. These partnerships and future projections make Aston Martin one of the most promising and exciting projects in all of Formula 1. And with Verstappen at the wheel and behind the scenes, I think there might just be no stopping them. So does Max see this as a good opportunity? I'd think if he was looking out the door of Red Bull, it might be one that he will heavily consider. Also, if you disagree with me, you're wrong, because Crofty said so too. Alright, while I kid and, everyone has opinions, because let's be real, nothing is guaranteed in the sport, it seems highly likely that if Max Verstappen were to leave the team in 2025 or even 2026, Aston Martin would be the best option for now. With that said though, time will tell, as Max Verstappen might not even leave Red Bull. Who knows? But if he does, and I were a betting man, I'd be putting all of my chips on British Racing Green. So with that said, tell me, which team do you think that Max Verstappen will be driving for in 2025 and for the oncoming future? And if you've made it this far, make sure you hit that big red subscribe button so you don't miss any of the future F1 updates in this incredibly exciting season of Formula 1. The driver transfers, that is.